The desperate arrival captain, Alina Vasquez, had seen many strange things during her 15 years exploring the outer rim of human space. She had witnessed dying stars collapse into black holes, discovered planets made entirely of crystal, and encountered alien ruins that predated human civilization by millions of years. But nothing had prepared her for the sight that appeared on her ship's view screen as the Starward Bound emerged from hyperspace near the Kepler 442 system. Floating in the empty void between stars was a fleet unlike anything in the galactic database. The ships appeared to be made of living light, their hulls shifting between translucent white and soft gold as they drifted through space. They were beautiful in a way that made Elena's chest tighten with emotion, but there was something wrong. With them, the elegant vessels moved slowly, almost lazily, as if they were struggling just to maintain course. "Captain, I'm detecting massive power failures across their entire fleet," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Torres from the sensor station. "Their engines are running at maybe 10% capacity. Whatever these beings are, they're in serious trouble." Alina moved to stand behind her communications officer, Ensign David Kim. "Any response to our hail, David?" The young officer shook his head, his face creased with concentration. "I'm trying every frequency in the standard diplomatic range, Captain." "Wait, ... I'm getting something. It's not audio, it's light patterns. The computer is trying to translate it now." The main screen flickered as the ship's artificial intelligence worked to decode the alien message. Slowly, words began to appear in English text across the bottom of the display. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear enough to make Elena's blood run cold. "We are the Cathara. We flee from those who would see us destroyed. 3 times we have asked for sanctuary. 3 times we have been turned away. Our children grow weak without proper energy sources. We die slowly in the cold between stars. Please, if there is mercy in your hearts, we beg you to hear our words." Alina stared at the message as it repeated across the screen. The Cathara. She had never heard of them, which meant they were probably from the inner galaxy where the major powers held sway. If they were refugees fleeing to human space, something terrible must have happened to them. "Send a response, David. Tell them we hear their message and are prepared to help. Ask them to identify their needs and the size of their population." The reply came quickly, the light patterns from the alien ships becoming more intense as they transmitted. "We are 300,000 souls fleeing the judgment of those we once called friends. The Hegemony Coalition declared us weak. The Azure Empire called us cowards. The Crystalline Union named us defective. We have been cast out because we will not make weapons of our gifts." Alina felt a chill run down her spine. The 3 powers the aliens had mentioned were among the most influential civilizations in the galaxy. If all of them had rejected the Cathara, it suggested something serious was at stake. Over the next several hours, Alina learned the tragic story of the Cathara people. They were an ancient species, nearly as old as the galaxy itself, who had evolved the ability to manipulate electromagnetic energy with their minds. They could power entire cities with nothing but their focused thoughts, heal injuries by directing energy flows through living tissue, and even communicate across vast distances by modulating light itself. But when the great powers of the galaxy had demanded they weaponize these abilities for war, the Cathara had refused. Their entire culture was built around the principle of harmony with energy, not domination over it. They believed that using their gifts to cause harm would corrupt their souls and eventually destroy their species. This refusal had cost them everything. One by one, Their allies had abandoned them. Their trade agreements were cancelled. Their colonies were left defenseless. When raiders finally attacked their homeworld, there was no one left to help them. The survivors had fled in whatever ships they could find, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs and the desperate hope that somewhere in the galaxy, someone would show them mercy. Alina made her decision quickly. She knew it would probably end her career and might even start an interstellar incident. But she couldn't turn her back on 300,000 refugees who had nowhere else to go. Open a channel to Admiral Chen at Fleet Command, she ordered. Priority Alpha encryption. Admiral Marcus Chen appeared on the screen within minutes, his weathered face showing the stress of commanding humanity's small but growing space fleet. Captain Vasquez, what's your situation out there? We're showing massive energy signatures in your area. Alina took a deep breath. Sir, I've made contact with a refugee fleet. 300,000 aliens called the Cathara. They've been rejected by every major power in the galaxy and are asking for asylum in human space. The Admiral's eyebrows rose sharply. 300,000, Alina. Do you have any idea what kind of political firestorm this could create? We're still trying to establish ourselves as a credible galactic power, taking in refugees that the big players have already rejected could be seen as an act of defiance. With respect, sir, it could also be seen as an act of humanity. These people are dying out here. Their ships are failing. Their children are weak from hunger. And they've been wandering the void for months looking for someone who will help them. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment, and Alina could see him weighing the political consequences against his own moral compass. Finally, he nodded. Escort them to Harmony Station. We'll set up temporary refugee facilities there while we figure out a long-term solution. But Alina, this decision is going to have consequences that go far beyond just us. Harmony Station was one of humanity's newest colonies, built on a planet with perfect atmospheric conditions and abundant resources. It had been intended as a showcase of human engineering and determination, a symbol of how far the species had come in just 50 years of space travel. Now it would become something else entirely, a sanctuary for beings who had been rejected by the rest of the galaxy. The journey to Harmony Station took 8 days, and during that time, Alina learned more about the Cathara than any human had ever known. They were unlike anything in the galactic database, with translucent skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light and eyes that shifted color based on their emotions. They didn't eat food in the traditional sense, instead absorbing electromagnetic energy directly from their environment. Their leader, a tall, graceful being who called herself Luminicale, spoke through patterns of light that danced across her skin. The ship's computer had gradually improved its translation algorithms, making conversation easier as the days passed. Your species puzzles us, Luminicale said during one of their diplomatic meetings. We have studied your history through your information networks. You are young, aggressive, often violent among yourselves, yet you offer sanctuary to strangers when ancient civilizations would not. Why do you risk so much for people you do not know? Alina considered the question carefully. Maybe it's because we're young. We haven't learned to be cynical yet. Or maybe it's because we know what it's like to be underestimated and dismissed. Most of the galaxy sees us as primitive barbarians who got lucky with faster-than-light travel. We know what it feels like to be on the outside looking in. When they finally reached Harmony Station, Alina was amazed by what humanity had accomplished in just 8 days of preparation. Governor Patricia Williams had worked round the clock to establish temporary housing facilities that could accommodate the Cathora's unique needs. The refugees required areas with high electromagnetic activity to maintain their health. So human engineers had constructed special chambers lined with energy-conducting crystals. Medical teams, led by Dr. Rebecca Santos, were standing by to help with any health issues, though they quickly discovered that the Cathora's energy-based biology was completely unlike anything human medicine had encountered. Xenobiologists were eager to learn about their physiology, but they approached with the respect due to refugees, not test subjects. The most impressive sight was Admiral Chen himself waiting at the spaceport as the first Cathara transport ships landed. The Admiral was a career military officer who had fought in 3 different conflicts with alien powers. But when Luminicale emerged from her ship and approached him, his voice was warm with genuine welcome. Asterisk. I wish we could offer you a homeworld like the one you lost, Admiral Chen said, as interpreters translated his words into light patterns. But what we have, we share freely. Your people are safe here, and they will remain safe as long as humanity has the strength to protect them. Luminicale's form pulsed with soft golden light, which the translators indicated was an expression of deep gratitude. We bring little but our knowledge and our desperate hope that kindness still exists in this galaxy. Perhaps that will be enough to repay your mercy. As Alina watched the first Cathara families step onto human soil, their translucent skin shimmering in the afternoon sunlight, she felt a surge of pride in her species. Humanity might be young and inexperienced compared to the galactic powers, but they had something that age and experience sometimes cost: the ability to see suffering and respond with compassion rather than calculation. But even as she celebrated this moment of hope, Alina knew that the real challenges were just beginning. News of humanity's decision was already spreading through galactic communication networks. The powers that had rejected the Cathara would not be pleased to see their judgment overruled by an upstart species barely 50 years into space travel. Within hours of the refugees' arrival, the first protest ships appeared in Harmony Station's orbit. They came from Earth, carrying human citizens who were angry that their government had committed them to housing 300,000 aliens without a public vote. The protesters demanded that the refugees be sent away before they could drain human resources or bring down the wrath of the galaxy's major powers. But there were also ships, carrying volunteers, human doctors, engineers, teachers, and farmers who had heard about the refugees' plight and wanted to help. They came with supplies, expertise, and most importantly, open hearts ready to welcome beings who had been rejected by everyone else. As Alina stood in the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching human and Cathara children play together in the gardens below, she realized that this moment would be remembered as a turning point, not just for the refugees who had found safety, but for humanity itself. They had chosen compassion over caution, hope over fear. Whatever consequences followed, they would face them together. The price of compassion 3 months after the Cathara refugees had arrived at Harmony Station. Dr. James Park stood in his laboratory watching something that should have been impossible. The translucent being floating 3 feet off the ground in a meditation pose was channeling enough electromagnetic energy to power a small city, and he was doing it without any visible strain. The Cathara called him Resonancetal, and he was one of their most gifted energy manipulators. For the past week, he had been working with James to understand how human technology might be adapted to work with Cathara abilities. The results were beyond anything human science had imagined possible. The energy flows through living tissue like water through a riverbed, Resonancetal explained, his thoughts translated into English by the advanced computers that had been developed specifically for human Katara communication. Your machines try to force electrons through rigid pathways. We guide them along natural currents that already exist in all matter. James made careful notes as he monitored the energy readings from his instruments. What he was seeing challenged fundamental assumptions about physics and engineering. The Cathara didn't generate energy so much as redirect it from sources that human technology couldn't even detect. But the scientific breakthrough that was occurring in his lab stood in stark contrast to the political crisis building in the outside world. Earth's government was under enormous pressure to return the refugees to the galactic powers that had originally rejected them. The Hegemony Coalition had been the first to make their displeasure known. Ambassador Helena Cross had delivered their message personally, her face grim as she read the formal diplomatic protest. The Coalition considers humanity's harboring of the defective Cathara to be an act of interstellar destabilization. These beings were rejected for good reasons. Their refusal to contribute to galactic defense makes them parasites on species that are willing to shoulder the burden of protecting civilization. The Azure Empire's response had been even more direct. They had dispatched a trade fleet to Earth's solar system with orders to suspend all commercial relationships until the refugees were returned. The economic impact was already being felt across human colonies as supply chains were disrupted and planned expansion. Projects were cancelled. Most concerning of all was the reaction from the Crystalline Union. The silicon-based intelligences that made up the Union communicated through logic rather than emotion, but their message was unmistakably threatening. They calculated that humanity's decision would result in cascading instabilities in galactic power structures and recommended immediate corrective action to prevent optimal solution matrices from degrading beyond acceptable parameters. Governor Patricia Williams found herself dealing with increasingly violent protests as human citizens demanded that their government reverse its decision. The demonstrators gathered outside the refugee settlement carried signs reading "Humans first" and "Send them back where they came from." Some of the more extreme groups had even attempted to sabotage the power systems that kept the Cathara habitat areas functioning. But for every human who wanted the refugees gone, there was another who had been inspired by their story. Dr. Rebecca Santos had made remarkable discoveries working with Cathara healers. Their ability to manipulate energy at the cellular level allowed them to treat genetic diseases that human medicine had given up on as incurable. "We had a paralyzed patient walk out of the medical center yesterday," Rebecca told the Colony Council. During their emergency meeting, a woman who had been in a wheelchair for 12 years, the Cathara healer spent 3 hours redirecting neural energy flows, and now she's completely mobile. "We're not just helping refugees here, they're helping us solve problems we never dreamed we could solve." The breakthrough that changed everything came when James realized that Cathara energy manipulation could be combined with human fusion technology to create unlimited clean power. Working with Resonance Doll and a team of human engineers, he developed a prototype reactor that produced more energy than the entire colony had been using, with zero harmful emissions and no radioactive waste. This could solve Earth's energy crisis, James explained to Admiral Chen during a secure video conference. Not just solve it, eliminate it completely. We could provide clean, unlimited power to every human settlement in the galaxy. The economic implications alone are staggering. But even as human Cathara cooperation reached new heights of success, the political pressure continued to mount. Earth's President, Sarah Mitchell, found herself facing impeachment proceedings as opposition politicians argued that her administration had exceeded its authority by accepting the refugees without congressional approval. The crisis came to a head when intelligence reports indicated that all three major galactic powers were assembling military fleets. The official reason given was joint training exercises, but everyone understood the real message. If humanity didn't return the Kythera voluntarily, they might be taken by force. Admiral Chen called an emergency meeting of the Colonial Defense Council, bringing together military commanders, civilian governors, and scientific advisors from across human space. The debate was intense, with some arguing for capitulation to avoid a war that humanity couldn't hope to win, while others insisted that bending to threats would destroy humanity's credibility as a spacefaring civilization. It was Lumina Kale herself who provided the deciding factor. The Cathara leader had been monitoring human communications, and she understood perfectly well the position that her people's presence had put their hosts in. "We will leave if that is what you truly wish," she told the assembled council, her words translated into patterns of golden light that somehow conveyed deep sadness despite the electronic medium. "We are grateful beyond measure for the months of safety you have given us. We will not repay that kindness by bringing war to your worlds." The council chamber fell silent as her words sank in. These beings had been rejected by everyone else in the galaxy, had found sanctuary among humans, and were now prepared to venture back into the void rather than cause their protectors any more trouble. It was Admiral Chen who spoke first, his voice rough with emotion. "With all due respect, Luminicale, the question isn't whether you'll leave. The question is whether we'll let you. And the answer to that is absolutely not." Governor Williams nodded in agreement. "We've seen what your people can offer the galaxy. Clean energy, medical miracles, technologies that could benefit every species. The galactic powers rejected you because you wouldn't make weapons. We're keeping you because of who you are, not in spite of it." The decision was unanimous. Humanity would not abandon the refugees, regardless of the consequences. They immediately began preparing for what might become the first interstellar war in human history. But the Cathara had other plans, working in secret with human scientists and engineers. They had been developing something unprecedented, a defensive system that could protect entire worlds without causing harm to attackers. Asterisk. "We cannot make weapons," Resonance Stoll explained as he demonstrated the new technology. "But we can make shields that turn aggression back upon itself. Any energy weapon fired at a protected world will simply dissipate harmlessly into space." When the combined fleets of the three galactic powers finally arrived at Harmony Station, they found something they had never expected. The human colony was protected by an energy field that made their weapons completely useless. More importantly, they were greeted not by a desperate human government ready to negotiate, but by a joint human Cathara delegation prepared to stand firm. Admiral Chen's message to the assembled fleet commanders was broadcast across the galaxy. "The Cathara came to us as refugees. They found sanctuary here not because we needed their technology, but because it was the right thing to do. In return, they've shared knowledge that benefits all life in the galaxy. They chose us when no one else would help them. Now we choose them as our partners and friends." The standoff lasted for days as the galactic powers tried to understand how the young human species had managed to develop defenses that their advanced weapons couldn't penetrate. When they finally demanded a demonstration of the shield technology, they were shocked to discover that it had been freely shared with every human colony in the galaxy. Faced with the reality that military action would be both impossible and pointless, the three powers had no choice but to negotiate. But the galaxy had changed. Other species that had been watching the crisis began to reconsider their own attitudes toward cooperation versus conquest. If humans in Cathara could create such wonders working together, what might be possible with other partnerships? Within a year, the Harmony Accords had been signed, establishing a new model for interstellar relations based on mutual benefit rather than military strength. The Cathara became full citizens of the Human Federation, while their defensive technology was shared freely with any species willing to pledge non-aggression. Dr. James Park, now director of the Joint Human Cathara Research Institute, often reflected on how a simple act of compassion had transformed the entire galaxy. The refugees, who had been rejected as weak and useless, had proven to be the key to a new age of cooperation and prosperity. As he watched human and Cathara children playing together in the parks of New Geneva City, built where the refugee camps had once stood, James smiled at the irony. The galaxy's great powers had turned their backs on the Cathara because they wouldn't make weapons. Humanity had welcomed them for the exact same reason, and in doing so, they had created something far more powerful than any weapon. Hope for a future where strength was measured not by the ability to destroy, but by the willingness to protect and nurture life in all its forms. The stars that had once seemed cold and hostile now shone with the promise of endless possibilities, all because one young species had chosen compassion over fear and friendship over power. Asterisk.